my partner, he is exhausted with the 85-hour countdown to the draft. And I told him, like, where have we been all off season where some people are on like their seventh mock. When you when you look at, or eighth or 10th or some inordinate number of mock drafts, when you look at as we're getting close to Thursday, do you feel like you know more or less than you did, let's say, 3 weeks ago?
Ooh, right about probably the same amount, which is almost nothing.
It's crazy.
Every mock draft is different. Every person you talk to hears something different, and now we hear more about a few different players have medical red flags, or a few different players have character, not even red flags, just little quirks about them. And you hear, well, certain teams feel this about that, or certain teams don't feel this about that. So I don't know what's going on. And I hate that because normally I have a little bit of an idea. I've been doing this since 2014, 2015, and I have my connections. And sometimes I'm like, I know what'll happen here. I have a good idea of what this team thinks of this. This year, I just don't know. I don't. Every mock from every big analyst is different. So that just tells you where we're at right now.
So DB asked me this question earlier. After Cam Ward at 1 to Tennessee, is there any confidence in any pick after that? Or where do you start shrugging your shoulder and go, I don't know?
I do think Cleveland, I think 2 and 3 feel pretty.
They'll just flip flop, right? Whomever the other doesn't take.
I think Cleveland is going to take Travis Hunter. I really, really do. And I think the Giants
will take
Abdul Carter.
I agree.
But it feels like that's almost so locked in that the Giants are hiding something, and we might see a wild card pick there, whether it's Shedeur, which I don't think it'll be that. But I do know that Abdul Carter had that, the shoulder injury, the foot injury. I don't have as much confidence in the Giants taking Abdul Carter as I wish I did.
So you mentioned Shedeur there. There's reports that come out in the last couple of days that, Todd McShay was talking to a couple teams, and he goes, yeah, they just don't feel like he cared what they thought about him. Is that good, bad, indifferent? Like, what does that mean? Because it seems strange.
I think at first, Shedeur absolutely thought he was a top 5 pick. I really do. And then as the process goes on, he's realizing, oh, shoot, teams do not view me as high as I might have viewed myself, or the media might have viewed me initially. And so he's realizing, or he thought early on, I don't have to care where this team in the 20s, or I don't have to care about this opinion of like what the team in the 20s is thinking of me. And now it's like, well, you might have to. You might be a late trade back into the first round type of player versus the top 10 pick. And, Shedeur is his own guy. He kind of marches to the beat of his own drum, so to speak. So I think it was kind of a whirlwind process for him, because I have a buddy that works for one NFC team, and he said, we think Shedeur is a day 2 player. And, that's crazy to hear, because the media had him going top 2, top 3 forever. And then all of a sudden the big drop comes in because, you finish up all the tape, you hear from teams, and it's like, he's not thought of that highly around the league. For sure.
Let me ask you something about, and I get the word safe. I don't want to get into semantics because it is relative, but of guys that you hear the but seem to be in the top 8 or 9-ish picks, do you feel more comfortable about Will Campbell or Mason Graham?
That's funny you throw those two guys on me, because those two have been polarizing.
Right.
So the thing about Will Campbell to me is, even before the measurements, his tape was average, and I could tell how short his arms were going to be. So for me, he was always the guy where I'm like, you don't take him in the top 10. You absolutely do not. Where Mason Graham doesn't have elite tools. He doesn't have elite traits. I don't think he projects to be an elite NFL defensive lineman, but I think he is safe in that what you're getting. You're getting an effort player. You're getting a culture guy. You're getting a guy who's a technician, a savvy run defender. He probably is not going to be, in the Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams tier, Jeffrey Simmons tier, but he's going to be below that, where he's going to be like an old school throwback of Kyle Williams when Kyle Williams was on the Bills or something like that, where you're getting a great player. You just can't expect him to take over games. I think Mason Graham is, as much as we can rely on that word, safe when you look at his projection.
Speaking of tools and guys that actually do have them, Shamar Stewart is a really polarized. Speaking of polarizing picks, you put out a tweet about him yesterday or a couple days ago that I thought was interesting. So you've got tools, and then you've got production, and then you've got tape, right? And for production, I'm calling that stats, right?
Yeah.
Where are the areas where Shamar Stewart shines? Because obviously we know the tools, the stats really aren't there. What does the tape tell you about him, though?
I mean, the funny thing about Shamar Stewart is his motor runs hot. He goes balls to the wall the whole game. When a lot of these guys, when you don't see production, you're like, well, his motor, he gives up a lot. His motor's hot and cold. This dude is all over the place. He's an elite run defender. He has an elite set of, the height, weight, speed is insane. The length is insane. Like I said, as a run defender, you're getting an elite player. He, even in a ton of their games, had a lot of pass rush wins, where granted, a lot of them are bull rushes, long arms. He really doesn't have a full bag of the ghost movie. He doesn't have a lot of pretty stuff, but he wins a lot. It's just, they played a lot of mobile quarterbacks. He's in contain a ton. When it's RPO stuff, the ball comes out immediately, so he'll beat, a tackle and balls out. And you're like, all right, well, that was an easy sack had the quarterback not got rid of the ball. He beat Will Campbell quite a few times in their matchup. He beat Armand Membu, who's going to be a top 10 pick in their matchup. But the ball's out. It's college. It's a whole different game than the NFL. That's not a lot of true drop back stuff. So it's like there's enough flashes where if you can convince yourself, we can get this guy to finish. The NFL is a little different. I can coach him up. I feel like, to me, he's a top 10 pick. I know some people don't see it that way just because of the stat sheet, but there is more than enough there on the tape to say, all right, he's winning. It's just, it didn't lead to production, but why was that? And there's a lot of actually valid reasons to, kind of justify it, for me at least.
All right, I get. I'm one of these guys. I fully understand that if you force feed something, eventually those people will eat. Right? It's fine. Right? So Warren and his targets and moving all around Penn State's offense, and I get it. I mean, the stats are going to be there. I'm just as a Big Ten honk. Right? I'm watching these guys, and I fell in love with him because his coming out party was against Nebraska. But you got to walk me through, what am I missing when I'm going to take this to my grave, hopefully, that Loveland is a better NFL prospect as a tight end than Warren?
You're preaching to the choir here.
I'm all like, remember him a couple years ago against Nebraska? I'm like, holy smoke, this guy is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's legit.
Warren's the classic. So he did have a weird breakout where it's like this year he just explodes. And I think the reason for that is he's not a special athlete. He's a special football player in that, he can do anything. Like, this guy is one of those guys when, you go to the park and play with your buddies, he's a monster. He can do anything. He plays quarterback. He plays defense. He's lining up everywhere. And, he's amazing just because, what can't this guy do? But when you project him to the NFL, even at Penn State, I'm like, all right, there's not a lot of special physical traits here. He's not super speedy. He's not super quick. He doesn't have amazing change of direction. He doesn't have the length that Colston Loveland does. There's a lot of what we call empty calorie receptions where
that's the force feeding thing. Yeah.
They're just forcing the ball to him, which is awesome. He does a lot for them, and he's an easy way to get, your young quarterback comfortable because you're not throwing to the boundary a ton. You're getting him these weird carries and receptions and wildcat quarterback stuff. But I don't feel like moving forward you can take, unless the medicals are bad for Colston Loveland, which we've heard some things. But I think Colston Loveland does definitely project as a better tight end with the length, with the size, with the speed, and the ability to get up the seam and get vertical. I would take Colston Loveland every day of the week as well. I just think Tyler Warren's an awesome football player, but he's going to have a little tougher time separating and just getting open, plain and simple in the NFL. it's going to be tougher for him.
Justin, I think there's some people that view tight end as one of the stronger positions in the draft. Obviously, quarterback isn't a strength in this draft. What spots do you look at and say, hey, I really like either the top end talent or the depth of this position group in this draft?
I mean, the edge rusher is insanely deep. The edge rusher is so deep, and there's so many different types of players. I mean, you've got Shamar Stewart and Michael Williams, who are the big, long freaks, and both kind of lack that production. You have Jalen Walker, who played at Georgia, who's versatile, to a degree, but extremely undersized. And then you have like Mike Green, James Pierce, the speed rushers. There's a bunch of flavors of edge rusher. And then running back obviously is the other group where it's like, when do the starter grades stop coming out on these guys? You can in the middle of day 3, I'm like, there's Bajal Tootin from Virginia Tech who ran in the 4.3s, who's got the size that you would look for in a feature back, so to speak. And then you have Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, who's probably also going to be a day 3 guy. But you have, the top of the list, which is Trevion Henderson and Ashton Genty. The running backs are super, super deep. And again, it's like a bunch of different flavors of ice cream there, where I don't think anyone can really predict what the order of those guys is going to be when they come off the board. It's just a bunch of talented dudes. And, now we're hearing teams want to trade up for Genty. And that doesn't shock me. I mean, he's an amazing running back prospect. It's a good class, but if you have that high of a grade on him, because he kind of feels like he separated himself from the pack. So I don't know. That's the main group where I'm like, I just can't wait to see who takes these guys and in what order, because that's always when you go back, to previous classes, you're like, I want to see the order of when these receivers came off the board, when these guys came off, because it's interesting to look at teams' processes.
Oh, man, I didn't even include my sleeper of that bunch because I'm a big running backs guy, and that's R.J. Harvey.
I love R.J. Harvey.
Yeah, I used to do.
What about Woody Marks? That's your guy, I thought.
He is. I like both Marks and Harvey, but for different reasons. Marks is a much better inside runner than I think people think, and so he would be a good zone guy. But Harvey is more explosive where, I mean, you could put him just about anywhere. But let me ask
Harvey's
you.
that guy you bust out late in the game, and he just wears the defense out. They're not ready for that type of speed. They're not ready, yeah.
So
he's awesome.
So I kind of like the defensive tackle depth. I don't know how elite it is, but I do think it's pretty deep. And for instance, like I would ask you, what's the difference between, for you, a guy like Walter Nolan and a guy like Derek Harmon?
Derek Harmon is, what does he have, like 35-inch arms? I mean, what a freak. A big monster of a dude who probably can play pretty much anywhere along the line. But
Shoot, you could probably put Kenneth Grant in that discussion too. I mean, they're all right there.
Right. I think Derek Harmon is probably a 3-tech, but he could also play 5. And, you can put him in a lot of different schemes because of that length. But I think if you're looking for a guy that has the tools and traits to project, to be a pure upfield gap shooter disruptor, that's Walter Nolan. The lower body is loose. The upper body is flexible. There's just a lot to work with there. Where Derek Harmon, you're probably getting more of a run stopper first, and then you're going to work on what he can be as a pass rusher. But the pure disruption you're going to get from Walter Nolan, hopefully, the projection is that could be elite. Kenneth Grant I like, but he does play a little narrow, a little high. He didn't test like the freak we heard he was going to be. So, people compared him to Dexter Lawrence, but I think we got to pump the brakes on that the floor is probably a little lower than we thought for Kenneth Grant. The tools are still awesome, but I do think we jumped the gun a little bit with him at first.
Hard to believe. Michigan is going to have 2 defensive linemen go in the first round.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I get it. Yeah. The offense struggled, but that's a pretty good roster.
The draft picks that we're going to look at, looking back and say, all these guys went to Michigan?
Yep.
Yeah. It's going to be wild this year.
Yeah. If only they had a quarterback.
Awesome. Let me ask you something, Justin, because I said this, I don't know when this is, probably January, and this was before the buzz on Jackson Dart. And I said, Jackson Dart is probably closer to being 2 in terms of quarterbacks, closer to Shedeur than Shedeur is to being taken before Cam Ward. So you got to give me a little grace on the time frame. This was January. But how true do you think that is? And you can just start with maybe the difference between Sanders as QB2 versus Dart as QB2. They do it in a little different way, you know. Dart's the pocket climber and constantly pressing forward, but they do seem to have some similar ways in how they get it done.
Look at you ahead of the game back in January. No, Dart's interesting. He's an athlete. First off, like the guy, he's an underrated athlete. We always say that about the white guys, but he's an underrated athlete where when he takes off, you know, there's he can do some real damage with his legs. His arm is live. It's not elite or anything like that, but it's live. He can throw on the run. He can change the arm slot, change the angle. But he comes from that Lane Kiffin system at Ole Miss where it's like, it's so manufactured where, you know, he snaps the ball. He knows where he's going with it. This guy's supposed to be open. So he's kind of clearly behind the 8 ball when it comes to projecting that to the NFL. He's going to have a big learning curve where Shedeur played in a more pro-style system, but he's not quite the athlete that Dart is. His arm is well below what Dart's is. He's like the pure point guard when you look at what quarterbacks are. The only issue, so this is what I kind of realized watching Shedeur this year. Shedeur needs to be that pure point guard where, you know, like Joe Burrow, snap the ball, know where you're going with it, get the ball out, live in the short game, live in the short to intermediate. The problem is he thinks of himself differently. He's constantly extending plays, constantly looking for the home run, but he doesn't have the arm to deliver it. So I think it's going to be weird to see. It's going to be interesting to see him get to the NFL and kind of have that humility or that gut check and say, what am I? What can I really actually be versus what have I been trying to do my whole career? And I think that's why some teams are like, well, we'll just take Dart, the guy with the tools, the mobility, and we'll coach him up versus trying to figure out what we can get out of Shedeur when his tools don't really match up to the guy that he thinks he is so far.
So if I set the over-under at 2.5 quarterbacks in the first round, would you take the over?
I think I would take the under. Obviously, we know Cam Ward's going. I think Jackson Dart gets into the last half, and I think that's it.
Who goes before? So you don't think Shuck has a chance to run down Dart?
No, I don't. I would have said 2 weeks ago, I would have said, yes, there's a chance right now. From everything I know, which probably is nothing compared to what I should know, I don't think Shuck has that chance. I don't. I think that he ends up in day 2. There's too many red flags with Shuck, you know, the age. There's a few medical things that are just minor, but I don't think that he ends up in round 1.
So, Justin, let me ask you this, because there's one quarterback we haven't mentioned yet that I think is a total wild card.
And if you bring up Pittsburgh, you're off.
Is a total wild card in this, and that's Jalen Milroe. Some people think he might climb into the first round. Some people think he's a round 3 or 4 pick. Is he the one variable that you look at and you go, I have no idea who views him in what light and where he might go, or where do you see Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, he's absolutely the wild card. The tools are pretty cool, you know, like, all right, he can throw far and he can throw hard and he can run fast and he's big. But the tape was atrocious. And he regressed from year 1 to year 2 as far as these last 2 years. But each year we see teams convince themselves on guys with tools. And we're hearing that already again this year where it's like he went from, after the Senior Bowl, it was like, all right, he's a day 3 guy, to now who's going to sneak into the back half of the first round and grab him. That's insane to me. But I'm not, you know, I saw E.J. Manuel go in the first round. I saw Johnny Manziel go in the first round after being a little guy with
Christian Ponder.
Yeah,
Jake Locker.
We can't rule anything out. But so, I would be so shocked.
Let me ask you this, because I have this. I was not an Anthony Richardson guy by any means. Is the difference in terms of, I know Richardson's tools are, you know, otherworldly and whatever, but like, is the difference between a guy like him and a guy like Jalen Milroe is we just saw too much of Jalen Milroe? Like, if he's only got, how many starts did Anthony Richardson have? 10? Like, if he's only got 10 starts, are we talking about him as a first half of the top round guy because we're like, oh my God, the tools?
Not for me. For me, it's a completely different. It was a difference in like the feel of how they feel the game. Anthony Richardson knew how to drop back, and he knew how to avoid pressure and keep his eyes downfield and deliver the ball. Granted, he's inaccurate as heck, but Jalen Milroe is not that guy. Jalen Milroe drops back, and watching on film, I'm like, man, every single play, his process is different. There is no game plan here. It's like a series of random plays when you put his tape together. And that's the hard part is he doesn't feel pressure. He doesn't know where he's supposed to go with the ball, or he does, and he kind of forces it, and he looks really mechanical and robotic. It's just you're getting something new every play with him, and that's what bothers me is just the guy has no feel for the quarterback position yet. He's just out there winging it, and he's a good athlete, and that's awesome, and that keeps him going. But you watch the LSU game, and it's like, all right, he had 700 rushing yards. That's cool. But then you watch a different game, and they contained him well, and now he's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And that's where it's like, dude, you've been in college for a bit. We thought we were going to get progression from you this year, and it feels like we're back to freshman year. And, and that's where it's like, what do you, as a team, what are you selling yourself on here? Just the tools? Because I don't know if they're that good where it's like they're not Richardson good, where you can say, all right, we're still taking them top 10. I don't see that.
Is there a player in the top 5? Because, if you take Jacksonville, and I'm gonna keep New England in there because this is the post-Belichick era, and they're already on their second coach. Okay, so I'm going to take the Patriot way out. But you got Jacksonville, you have the Patriots, you have the Giants, you have Cleveland. And clearly you have Tennessee. Is there a player that they could take that can overcome the franchise's, not history, but kind of as they're currently functioning as a franchise? Because a lot of times with the draft, it is all about the fit. But these are obviously some shaky franchises at the top.
Oh, I agree 100%. The big wild card for me that I would love, this pick I would love for New England to just say, we're going to take the freak and we're going to go get Shamar Stewart at 4.
He fits with his coach's personality.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, and in your team that needs so much help at so many different areas, why not start young, athletic, freaky, like go swing for the fences. And then even Jacksonville, I hate this pick, but for some reason I'm like, do it. Take Tet McMillan at 5.
Oh, wow.
I think that's a huge reach.
Oh,
but I've heard some buzz. If they get him and you pair him with a Brian Thomas Jr., that would be just personally, I'm like, that would be very cool. And I've heard a few little tidbits about that, so I'm like, I don't know.
You just threw my next question. I have to table this for a second. Shoot. Okay. Shane, just remind me, just say Raiders when it comes back to me. That is interesting because we have yet to get into the wide receivers, and I'm a little leery of the skill in this draft. If it were me, I would be very patient. I would try to go up front, right? I'm going to go O-line, D-line. I want to be a lot like the Eagles, which is like, why wouldn't you, like, build interiorly? But
right,
the wide receivers seem to have so much variance in how we feel about him. And you pick the guy, one, that people have the most hand-wringing about. What is it about Tet where you think, all right, I get the comps to the negative about why he may not work. What are the comps to the good that lead you to believe he could be different with his body type and style of play?
Well, he's built like Michael Phelps, whereas like his upper body, like he's so long and he's so low cut, which is unusual, where he kind of has a little
That's a
more.
Great
he
term.
has the advantage. Yeah, he has this advantage where in the short area, he's quicker and a little more functional than a lot of these big guys. But his arms, I mean, the way he can elevate and use his length and his body control is just, he looks like a volleyball player. He looks like a basketball player, and that's what he was. So it's like you see this dude on the boundary that it's like, what? When we throw back shoulder balls, like he's perfect. This is what we want. And so he's, that T. Higgins. I don't like the Mike Evans comp. He's not as fast and explosive as Mike, but he honestly catches the ball better. Mike Evans had a lot of hands questions coming out of A&M, and even through his career, we see him with those, random drops where Tet is sure-handed. It's just, can he be physical enough and strong enough to not be pushed off his stem? And can he get off press? But the body control and the coordination is absolutely rare. So if you're looking for a guy that, we need a presence on the boundary, he's that guy. And that's why I'm like, if you pair him with Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville, that's just a mess for defenses to have to handle. And this class lacks guys like Ted McMillan. We have a lot of smaller guys in, Luther Burden, Matthew Golden. Emike Egbuka is not little, but he's lean and he's not a big guy. So it's like, if you're looking for the guy with the size, there's really only one at the top that you would swing for.
All right. I got to ask one more wide receiver question before I get back to the Raiders. And this is coming from a guy that loves Golden. I mean, on him from
middle of the season at least.
Yeah, just tough catches, good hands guy. They never used him vertically though, even though they would always take their shots. And maybe I get it. It's not your strength. He was so inaccurate, past 20 yards. But should I be concerned, as much as I like Golden, that for as fast as he ran, it doesn't seem like the tape says that's who his strengths are as a wide receiver? Is that more a Texas thing, or is that a flag thing?
It's so when I watched him, I was like, all right, he plays like he's like 4.4 flat. So he ran the 4.29, which I'm not buying still. People, there's been like conspiracies out there. People are slowing down the frames and they're like, all right, it's like 4.37, 4.38. Whatever it is, I think the game speed is what matters. And I think everyone thought he was around 4.4 flat. When you watch the tape, he was their Z, where it's like he's the guy that you're asking not to just run vertical all game, because then he's useless. It's just more so he's the guy that's getting the tough catches. He's running over the middle. He's making catches in traffic. He's the flanker. Like, this is the guy that we're going to ask to really do the meat of the work on the offense. So I don't think it's a red flag. I think there's a more vertical presence that he's waiting to unlock, and it's just not going to be with Quinn Ewers. Simply put, I think he probably compares a lot to like Stephon Diggs coming out, where is the speed elite? No, but he can get vertical if you get him good looks, and he's also going to make the tough catches and create after the catch. So I don't think it's a huge red flag. That offense at Texas was a mess. Watching Ewers be late on everything, watching Isaiah Bond have to wait for every catch and make easy catches turn into contested catches was pretty tough on those receivers. So I'm excited to see Matthew Golden get to the NFL and probably work in a more timing, rhythm-based offense where the ball is going to be there when he's open. The ball is going to be there when he's in and out of his breaks versus he's waiting on the ball. It's late, it's early, it's off target, it's whatever. That was the toughest part about watching his tape, honestly.
So, Justen, this is a show based in the state of Nebraska, so I do have an obligatory Huskers question here. Out of some of the guys that Nebraska's got coming into the draft, obviously no first-rounders or anything like that, but you've got Ty Robinson, who has had an interesting career, came on late as an older guy really strongly. Seems like there's maybe some momentum for him to be either, maybe an early day 3 guy, maybe sneak into day 2. And then you've got a couple interesting pass catchers in a Thomas Fidone, who tested really well, and then an Isaiah Nair, who tested really well, but maybe left a little bit to be desired on tape. How do you feel about some of the guys coming out of Nebraska?
To be honest with you, the only one I did study this year was Ty Robinson.
Yeah.
And I actually think he has a little more in his game. I think there's a little more to Ty Robinson than I think the media realizes.
I agree.
I'm like the guy with okay length, not great length, but enough where you're like, all right, that's great. 10-inch hands, 6'5", 290 at the combine. Like
he's got fresh legs too. He's got fresh legs.
Yeah, there's some movement skill there. I'm like, to me, he was in college forever. It felt like, but I'm like, this is the dude who's going to go be part of a rotation on the defensive line, and I think we're going to hear his name called for a decade. I think Ty Robinson was one of my sleepers too. I'm glad you brought him up because, he's probably going to go day 3. Might even be late day 3, but he'll go and then he's going to be on the team, and that another Husker in the NFL. So that's pretty cool.
All right, I got to ask because I got to get back to this about the shakiness of the franchises at the top. And full disclosure, this stems from my level of frustration. At a national show that I listened to, I was listening to Kenny and Carlin on the way, and Michelle on the way in, and they literally were posing the question because of Aaron Rodgers, like, can one guy even make the Steelers franchise look unstable? And the question was, who's more of the stable franchise right now? If I asked the question, the Steelers or the Jets? And as a Steelers fan, I was losing my mind. Like, I literally got out of my vehicle yelling, like, this is the most asinine thing I've ever heard. And I love the show. But I say that to say, because I felt like this was one of the better offseason hires and acquisitions in Pete Carroll to legitimize what the Raiders are doing. And our producer is a huge Raiders fan. And I think the NFL is better with the Raiders, and I get the division. Is he good enough, in your opinion, at this stage as a young 72-year-old to legitimize the Raiders who, Justin, I think you know this, they have a pretty legit roster and a chance to make another impact pick. Like, can you see this franchise competing in that tough AFC West?
Yeah, I think the cool thing about Pete Carroll is his age is not really like you said, he's the youngest 72-year-old alive, and he speaks so well to young players, and the culture he brings, where he wants to make guys enjoy football, and I think he does that. And then they go out and hire Chip Kelly at OC now. He's going to be calling plays. That's a unique hire because I think Chip's learned his lesson from his first stint in the NFL. And even watching Ohio State last year, he added a lot to what he does.
Yeah.
And I think with
crafty little run game between zone and gap, like that was pretty legit.
Right. They'll pop a lot of different stuff on you, kind of like Sean Payton, where it's like we have a lot. As a defense, you're going to have a lot to worry about and a lot to game plan for. And we can throw it on you anytime, any game, depending who you are, So I think this team with this coaching staff and the youthful roster they're building, I don't think they're going to be good, but I do think you might see, I guess, kind of like the Rams last year, where it's like this roster shouldn't be so hard to play against. Or even Carolina at the end of the year, where you'd look on paper and say, like, this roster isn't something that we felt like would give us trouble, but, here we are squeaking out a 20-18 win or something against them. And, these guys like playing with each other. They like playing for their coaches. I'm very eager to see what Vegas does in the draft because I think they're in a weird spot where it's like they probably should trade back for more picks. I don't know if there's like a nice, easy, sexy pick for them to take at 6, but I just want them to get impact players and, get more starters, get more guys that make plays, get young, get athletic. Don't swing for safe, swing for big, swing for impact because this team could be coming up. And Pete Carroll, I don't know how much longer he really has to coach, but he doesn't feel like he's aging. So, I mean, he could be here for another decade, I guess. I don't know. I want this to work for him because I think this is an awesome fresh start at the best place possible for him.
That's Justen Gammel, NFL draft analyst. Justin, awesome stuff. We appreciate the time. And hopefully you can make it the next 58 hours, 22 minutes, and 35 seconds until the draft.
I enjoy our annual meeting, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.